Coming to get you, Bobber.
Chernobyl Diaries is a 2012 horror movie directed by Bradley Parker, and it stars Jesse McCartney, Jonathan Sadowski and Olivia Taylor-Dudley. Hi guys, my name is Barry.
And I'm Jack.
And welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be doing a review for Chernobyl Diaries. This is a 10-year-old movie, so there's going to be spoilers in this review. 6 tourists hire an extreme tour guide that takes them to an abandoned city, Pripyat, the former home to the workers of Chernobyl nuclear reactor. During their exploration, they soon discover they're not alone. So first off, as you can see, I've got my son Jack with me today. I thought I'd bring him into this because he watched this movie with me. I'm trying to get Jack into horror films. He already loves horror, but I'm trying to get him into the kind of light-hearted or the light horror movies. Obviously he can't watch any of the extreme horror movies just now because he's too young, but he's almost 11 years old and he's going to give his thoughts as well today. Without giving anything away just now, Jack, so far what are you thinking about this type of horror movie?
Really good.
Really good, there you go. I remember when this film came out, it was a critical bomb. I don't think anyone liked this movie. It's got 5.0 on IMDb, but I think that's kind of creeping up over the last 10 years. I think it was a bit lower than that when it first came out. But I remember when I went to see this movie in the cinema, and I actually really liked it when it first came out. I didn't understand the hate. Well, I can kind of understand the hate, but from a movie standpoint, I didn't really understand it. Because I think a lot of the hate was because people thought that the director and the producer, Oren Peli, who directed Paranormal Activity franchise, I think people thought they were trying to profit off of a disaster, which sounds really bad. Oren Peli obviously didn't have that thought. He didn't think about it that way. Maybe he should have, but he also said, and I read this as well, that it raised awareness for children of the disaster. He obviously didn't mean to do that, but it brought out something positive for the movie because it did raise that awareness. So first we're going to talk about the setting for this movie. I've always said that I love the isolated settings in horror movies, and this is probably the most isolated you're ever going to get in a horror movie that's set on Earth. It's set in a city that's abandoned. It's been abandoned for decades and there's nothing around, so if you get stranded in this place, not only is no one there to help you, but if you're not able to get out of that city, then you run that risk of the radiation poisoning that's already around the area of Chernobyl. Obviously you've not seen a lot of horror movies, but in terms of the setting and stuff, Jack, what did you think of the setting when they went into this abandoned city?
It looked creepy when it was nighttime.
Yeah, it did.
It looked really creepy.
This movie is obviously based around extreme tourism, something I've never done before, something that obviously Jack's never done before, but there's something about it that I love the idea of the extreme tourism, going into places where people would normally never go, especially with family, obviously, especially with my son. But there's something about the idea of the extreme tourism. I think it helps with the photography. I'm a photographer, so going into a place that's abandoned and not been touched for years, it's something I'd like to do. I've done it in Scotland before. There's places in Scotland that's been abandoned and I've been and taken photographs of it, and they do look like Chernobyl, but obviously they don't have that radiation in it. But there's just something that draws you towards a movie that's set in that type of place. Not only would they have this secluded area and the radiation problem, it then gets dark and they have no lights, and obviously there's no lights in the city either, so when it gets dark, they're stuck in this radiation city. It's terrifying. The thought of it is terrifying. I don't know how you felt, Jack, but when you were watching it, how did you feel when it started to get dark at night and then the lights went off in the van?
I felt really scared because I didn't know what was going to happen, because you couldn't see anything, only the lights in the van. Yeah,
that was a good point as well. Like, it's not a found footage movie, but it almost felt like a secondary found footage movie. You know, they've got the camera equipment and stuff, but we see it from our point of view, so there's nobody always holding a camera. And I think when it's got that kind of found footage style, going like back and forward, I think when you were watching it, when the camera was moving around, especially when they were in the van looking out, I think you were going like this sometimes, weren't you? Like, whoa!
Yeah, it's all dark out there and the camera's in the van, so it looks like it's found footage, but even though it wasn't.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Really good.
When it comes to the acting, I think the acting was pretty good. better than a found footage movie, if you're calling it a found footage movie, but the acting was really good. I think it was Nathan Phillips that was in it. I forgot he was in it when I first watched the movie, and then when I watched it again, he was in it again. He's from a movie called Wolf Creek that you've not saw. He's an Australian actor, and when I saw him, I thought he's a great actor, but I think you said as soon as you saw this guy, because he turned up late, you said he's going to die first, remember? The guy with the beard and the hat. You're like, oh, he's going to die first. And I didn't think he would, and he didn't. I think he lasted a little bit longer.
Yeah.
But he was my favourite character. But at the start, you probably didn't pick up on this yet, but maybe you did. But at the start of the movie, you've got the main character, Jesse McCarthy, and his girlfriend. As soon as he said to his brother that he was going to propose to his girlfriend, remember he had the ring? As soon as we saw that ring, I just knew that all of them, or especially him and his girlfriend, or at least one of them, was definitely going to die. You know, that's the sort of things you pick up on when you're watching a horror movie. When you see little things like that at the start of the movie, like the boy says, I'm going to propose to my girlfriend, you're like, okay, you're going to die, or your girlfriend's going to die.
Wasn't he like the first one to die?
He was the first one to get... Yeah, I think he must have been. We never saw his body, because he was the first one to get attacked.
No, he's the second one to get attacked. Remember the Ukraine guy?
Well, Yuri, but I mean like the tourist. Like Yuri was the tour guide, the extreme tour guide. But out of the main characters, like the Americans and the Australians and stuff, Jesse McCarthy's character, was attacked with Yuri. But we think maybe when the van got flipped over, him and his girlfriend disappeared, remember?
Yeah, and only his girlfriend was found.
She was the only one that was found, but we found the ring.
Yeah. But then that weird thing came out. It was like a baby. What was that?
Oh yeah, it was under the covers, under the sheet thing. But it just looked like a deformed test subject, which we will get into in a second. When it comes to the story, there's not much of a story. You've just got this group of people that want to go extreme tourism, or on an extreme tourism tour, and they go into Chernobyl. Now, it does sound boring, but it's not to me. That simple storyline is pretty good. We do end up getting a more fleshed out reason as to what's happening there, because like Jack said, we don't know what these things are. Are they zombies? Are they ghosts? Are they people? Are they monsters? We just don't know.
Are the animals?
Are the animals? Because at times we thought it was just animals, remember, with the bear and the dogs and the wolves. So we didn't know what this thing was and why they were there. But when they flesh it out at the end of the movie, and this might be where people were not liking it, because we didn't get any answers until the very end. We find out that there's scientists that are still in Chernobyl. They've been there for 30 years or so. They're still there doing experiments, but I don't know, there's quite a lot of these things that are there, and I don't know if they're just taking test subjects or tourists, taking them in, doing experiments on them. They're working or they're not working, and they're sending them back out into Chernobyl, and they might just die off eventually. So we still don't know if they're still going to die from the radiation poisoning. They don't look as if they've got... You remember when the tourists were there, their skin started to burn?
Yeah.
Near the end, but the things that were there, their skin didn't look as if they were burnt. They just looked like they were...
Yeah, and all of them were all bald, and all.
Yeah, with no hair. So obviously they had radiation poisoning at some point, but they still didn't die. And I think maybe the scientists were trying to do experiments on them, but when it didn't work, they obviously don't want people to know. So when some of the tourists survive, like the girl at the end, then they couldn't let her live.
So they feed them to
they feed her to them. Yeah, and that was kind of the end of the movie. So it was a kind of short and sweet ending, but it gave you enough to understand what was happening. Maybe not to the extent where a lot of people would want to know what was happening, but I like to not know too much. I think less is more, especially with this movie. At the end of the day, I think this movie's main aim was to give us a situation in a horror movie where the fear is being abandoned in a place where you can't get out of. And not only that, is trying to get out is a race against time because of the radiation poisoning. There's so much that can go wrong, and it did go wrong within the movie for these characters. And I think if that's your goal for a movie, I think it succeeded. Yes, it was very predictable. Yes, we knew probably everyone would die, but it still kept me entertained. What about you, Jack? What did you think overall? Did you expect to see what you saw? Did you think something else was going to happen?
I thought something else was going to happen.
Did you think it was zombies or something?
Yeah, I thought it was like big monsters or something like that.
Yeah. Remember I think the first bit where we got a fright was, remember when they were doing the tour inside their little abandoned houses and we heard the noise?
Yeah.
And then this big bear.
Bear just getting...
Because I think you said, is that a monster? And we're like, no, it's a big bear, and it just ran across. So I think not knowing was the scary part because we didn't know what to expect.
Yeah.
But when we started to find out what was happening and we could see these things, it was no longer a mystery. So overall, I liked it. What about you, Jack?
I loved it. It was really good.
You loved it. I mean, obviously, Jack loves a lot of films that he watches, but I think he can still understand the difference between good and bad, and I don't think there was much bad about it. What would you think was the worst thing about this film, if you had to pick anything?
You couldn't see the the humans' faces properly. Like the bad people in this.
Yeah, I would say that as well. Yeah, I think if you want get a bit more clearer view of what it is that they're scared of or running away from, maybe it would have been better to see
one of their faces.
Yeah, and that maybe would have given us a bit of an answer as to, oh, they look really deformed, maybe it's because of the radiation poisoning, which we would expect, but how are they still alive? Anyway guys, if you've seen Chernobyl Diaries, leave your comments down below, let me know what you thought of the movie, let me know what you thought of the ending of it. Is there anything else that we've maybe missed out that should have been speaking about? Is there something about the ending that you think there's something else there than what we mentioned? Anyway guys, thanks a lot for watching again, thanks for subscribing, and I'll see you soon.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.